We had this idealized image in our mind of we were going to have this lovely little vegan family and we were going to be super ethical and we were going to be so environmentally friendly. And then we actually had children and I saw what was happening. I would go, I laugh about it now, I would go around the supermarket and I would put stickers on the packages of meat.
You followed junk vegan diet, whole food vegan diet, low fat vegan diet, supplement based vegan diet, and low sugar vegan diet.
If all I have to do to not eat animals is supplement B12, then I can cut out the middle cow and that's all I can do. And then a few months in, I learned about the omega-3s as we discussed before, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll take that. I'll just get it directly from where the fish get it from. I'll get it from the algae." And it seemed like every year that I went by on veganism, another supplement was added. I was trying to get pregnant, and I suffered a series of early miscarriages. There were still some nutrients that I was missing. So very, very early on in my trying to conceive journey, I learned about choline. I would have a big smoothie on a morning, like a big fertility smoothie, and I would put, I think I put like 2 tablespoons of sunflower lecithin in, and we even had kind of help and support from a dietitian. And the dietitian didn't tell us to quit veganism. She just tried to support us as best she could. In the end, when she still failed to gain weight, the dietitian said, "Oh, well, I guess just give her loads of..."
My brain's going to explode in a
Look,
bad way right now.
I know, right? Veganism is very much supported by the UK NHS. We'd agreed to raise the kids vegan, and it just seemed like a much more harmonious decision. To this day, I still feel immensely guilty about the start that our children had because, you know, my daughter was vegan until she was 3.
Hello, everyone. My today's guest is Liv, who was vegan for 9.5 years, followed by just over 2 years of post-vegan, what's called recovery. We're going to discuss some important aspects of her choices and what ultimately determined her lifestyle and relationships with veganism. Hello, Liv.
Hi.
The first question that I have for you is what brought you in here today? What was your incentive to participate in the Ex Vegan survey? And also, why did you want people to hear your story?
So I saw your post in the ex-vegan subreddit asking if anybody would like to come forward and fill in the survey. And I had a look at it and it seemed really interesting to me. And I wanted to tell my story in particular because I was vegan for quite a long time. It wasn't like I was, you know, vegan for a few months and then quit. It was many years. And I wanted to kind of find a way to kind of warn people to think twice before committing to this lifestyle for life, and to kind of remind people to remain open-minded at all times because things can change in ways that you didn't expect. And just like I did when I first went vegan, I know a lot of people, they sort of get to a few months in and they decide that this is how it's going to be for the rest of their life and they're never going to change. And that was me. So I wanted to kind of give my perspective with that to sort of show people what can happen.
I see. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, today we probably will have quite an interesting conversation. And
Hopefully.
before we begin discussing what happened as a result of veganism, I would like to learn how did veganism come into your life? So who sparked this idea? What was your source of inspiration? And what was the development beforehand?
So I went to university when I was 18, and at university I knew quite a few vegans and vegetarians. I had a vegan roommate, I had a vegetarian roommate in a different house I was in. So that kind of introduced me to the idea at all. While I was at uni, I decided to go vegetarian a few times just for Lent. I'm not religious, by the way. It just seemed a thing to do for Lent. In previous Lents, I'd tried to give up chocolate or the TV and things like that. So there was a couple of Lents where I decided to go vegetarian. And for those 40 days, I found it quite easy. So the year after I left university, my partner and I together decided that we would go vegan for Lent. And again, after 40 days, we thought it was quite easy. So we then did some research as to why people go vegan and then stay vegan. And that led me to documentaries such as Earthlings. I watched Dominion. I watched I watched a lot of them as they came out as well, because some of them weren't out back in 2014. So I watched things like Cowspiracy, What the Health, and that kind of confirmed to me that this was the right way to live and that I could never go back. So back in 2014, after I'd done the Lent challenge and been vegan, I then decided to stay vegan, mainly because of watching the documentaries and doing reading. There was also the Gary Yourofsky speech that I watched as well back then.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, I mean it sounds pretty classical, but on the aspect of Lent, actually, it's very similar to my path as well, because I tried being raw vegan for Lent. There was Lent in spring and then Lent in fall. And also was not religious thing endeavor for me. It was more like kind of cultural, I was like, okay, I come from the culture where Lent was observed by people historically.
Mm,
And so
yeah,
I was like, no, I'll do it. It's probably something proper to do, and I'll do it in this format. And I enjoyed it
yeah.
as well.
Well, I'd actually heard that in the Eastern Orthodox Church, they quite often do go vegan or very nearly vegan for Lent. So I was like, well, if whole countries and whole cultures can do it just for Lent, then I can do it. And it was during that Lent that I kind of found myself thinking, why do people do this for their entire
Mm.
life or for long term? And that's when I went down the rabbit hole of the documentaries and the speeches and the websites that are all dedicated to veganism.
Yeah. To me, though, what was the thought process for me was like, why don't people stay like this? So, and I found also like a lot of the people who were saying that, oh, by the way, the healthiest people in some old day Russia, some peasants, they were actually eating only plant foods,
Mm.
irrespective of time of the year. So, and they said that, oh, those like rich people, they had what's this disease? That's like uric acid builds up in the
But
joints.
gout.
Gout, yes. So they were saying that this is the disease of the riches, and peasants never heard of it, and peasants were living longest lives, and so on and so forth. So I started listening to all that, and I was like, makes sense. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly the same. In the UK where I live, there's very much a um, this idea that the poor people and the peasants and the low lives throughout history didn't eat animal products and therefore didn't get the diseases that the rich people got, like the gout, but other things like cardiovascular disease and what have
mhm.
you. So it's kind of assumed that that the fewer animal products that you eat, the more likely you are to live a long, happy, healthy life and not get the diseases that the rich people got back in the day. And there's a lot more to it than that, but this simplified view kind of just won't go away.
Hmm.
There's so many people who think that.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's actually similar. And in terms of, okay, so we discussed like some motivation, but in terms of nutrition, I see that you were diligently supplementing with B12 since the beginning of your veganism. So, did you like research the subject of vegan nutrition prior to committing to this lifestyle? And if so, like what were the resources that you used? How did you design your diet?
So I did do a little bit of research, and looking back, I don't think I did anywhere near enough. So I didn't go in completely blindly. I knew that you needed to take B12, that was absolutely something that you could not get from plants alone. Um, so I knew that. I also knew that it was probably a good idea over the course of a day to combine your proteins. So, make sure you have over the course of one day enough grains and enough beans to make sure you get your complete proteins, because most plant foods don't contain all of the essential amino acids in the right proportions. And I also knew after a few months of being vegan that you should probably supplement DHA and EPA, omega-3 fatty acids, because the sort that's available in plants, the alpha-linoleic acid, isn't very bioavailable, and some people's bodies struggle to convert it. So within a few months of being vegan, I was taking B12 and also omega-3s from algae. But that's kind of where it stopped. I was like, well, once I've covered those things and made sure that I eat a wide variety of plant foods, everything else will be absolutely fine. I won't need anything else. And I also genuinely believed that if you eat meat, you're still getting B12 via a supplement, because I believed that, farmers were supplementing the cows. And so there's a saying, I think, among the vegan community, which is like, oh, I was just cutting out the middle cow and taking the B12 supplement myself directly instead of eating meat to get it. So yeah, looking back, I did not do anywhere near enough research. So, started off ticking along just fine with the B12 and the omega-3s, and kind of ate what I wanted. I did eat
Mhm.
a wide variety of plant foods. My diet changed in that I was eating a lot more kind of what I call mixed foods. So before, where I might have eaten some meat and potatoes and vegetables, now I was eating a lot more things like stews and casseroles and curries, where all the food's kind of mixed in together and then
Mhm.
served with a carbohydrate. And for a very long time, I really enjoyed it, because I do love things like, stew and casserole and curry and things like that. So that wasn't an issue. And if I did have any kind of research or nutrition questions, I would go to vegan sources to get them. So I used sources such as nutritionfacts.org, which is run by Michael Greger. I looked at some of the things by other vegan doctors like McDougall. I learned a few things from the films that I watched, and I also bought a few vegan books as well. So I had one called Vegan for Life. I can't remember the author. I also read The World Peace Diet by Will Tuttle. And there was another one I read quite early on called Main Street Vegan. Again, I can't remember the author. And within the first few years of being vegan, I also attended lots of different veg fests or vegan festivals. And there's always lots of information available at the veg fests, either via pamphlets that you get on the stalls, or you can usually listen to a speaker talking about nutrition. So that's the kind of where I would get all my nutritional info. And I tended not to look at other sources outside of veganism, which I now know was probably a bad idea, because I wasn't getting a very balanced view. But, when I was so passionate and so in all of it, it seemed to make sense to me to just go directly to the vegan sources for the nutritional info, because I thought that if it wasn't a vegan source, then it was probably going to be biased against veganism. And I didn't want it to be, because I wanted to be told that, I was doing the right thing.
You actually surprised me with the fact that you were taking omega 3s right from the beginning. Because um, I kind of remember, even like 4 years ago, that flax seeds, chia seeds is what you need, walnuts. And so it was not really propagated that much that those supplements may be essential for you to get the preformed DHA and DPA. So it's actually rare that people go on the supplementation regimen like that straight from the beginning. It's usually when people start troubleshooting their diet when they start looking into that. So it's nice, I guess, that you you went this extra step, because B12 is usually that default supplement that people start taking. Because again, there's a lot of conflicting information surrounding any supplement, even within the vegan community. And even B12 is actually questioned by some MDs, vegan MDs. So that's quite Interesting. And then, in terms of, you mentioned that you regret that you weren't looking outside of veganism. I don't think that it's even possible, because when you are convinced that veganism is the way to go, you just wide look. Like, you kind of like start believing that all answers are found inside of veganism. You don't have any options. So
Exactly.
it's like floor is lava.
Yeah, exactly,
It's,
exactly. And they say that hindsight is 2020, so at the time I couldn't see it. Whereas now, as an ex-vegan, looking back, I'm now thinking, well, I should probably have got a balanced view before deciding to kind of commit to this for the rest of my life. But, you know, like I say, hindsight's 2020, and you
mm,
learn these things when you come out the other end.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you just step into the whole world, and suddenly you get flooded. You're like, well, did this information exist? I like remember when I started researching after I quit. I wanted to figure out what was wrong, and I find videos that are 10 years old, 15 years old, materials that existed for so long. I found so many ex-vegans who quit long ago, and I was like, why wasn't I exposed to that
Hmm.
before I switched to veganism? But I wasn't susceptible to that information. It just didn't exist for me.
Exactly.
They were all just stupid things. So stupid
Yeah.
people, stupid science, biased science. And so it's
Yeah, yeah, and
true.
it's interesting you say that, because the information was kind of there all along. I can now, when I do research, I can find scientific papers, maybe for example about things like bioavailability,
Hmm.
of plants and animal foods, and I look at the date that the paper was published, and it will say something like 2004, and I didn't go vegan till 2014. It's like, why didn't I find this back then? And I think another saying that I'm quite fond of is there's none so blind as those who will not see, and like you say, when you're utterly convinced that veganism is the be all and the end all, you simply won't find that information because you're not ready for it. And so
Hmm.
you won't be looking for it.
Yeah, it's very true, and kind of unfortunate at the same time. I guess we're entitled to our own experiences to the best of our knowledge, so there's no way back to just go and reverse it with our now enlightened understanding that it's, yeah, it is
Yeah,
what it is.
exactly, exactly.
So you, in the survey, you responded that you used to be on standard American diet, and coming from standard American diet to a vegan diet. How did you feel at first? Did you notice any changes in terms of your well-being by coming from standard American to vegan diet?
So I felt like mentally and emotionally, I guess, I felt wonderful. Like I felt like I was doing everything right. I'd found all the answers. I'd found the thing that was going to make me healthy. It was going to save the planet. It was going to save the animals. Um, so for a while, I was kind of riding this mental and emotional high. At first, there were certain foods that I did miss, because back in 2014, it was just before the vegan boom. So
Mm-hmm.
it was difficult to get a lot of things. Like you couldn't find vegan cheese, and if you could find it, it was rubbish. Um, you could find soy milk, but not really any of the other milks. And there was a lot of meat replacements that didn't exist back then. So I did miss certain foods, but the motivation to be vegan was stronger than missing the foods. So I had high motivation, and I would kind of say to myself, like, yes, I do miss this certain animal product, but the motivation, the reasons for being vegan were a lot stronger, and I felt like my taste buds weren't a good enough reason to indulge in whatever animal product it was. Physically, I felt very much the same for a while, um, because I'd kind of gone from the standard American diet, or rather the standard Western diet, being that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
the UK, and I'd kind of gone to like a vegan version of that. Um, so at first, I didn't my eating habits didn't really improve. It was like, you know, instead of meat and potatoes and vegetables for a meal, it might be some vegetarian sausages with the potatoes and the vegetables, or it might be just like a sweet potato and chickpea curry, but still with very little veg. Um, and I actually gained weight as well. When I first went vegan, I was as far as I can remember, because given that this is 12 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
over 12 years ago, as far as I can remember, I was still taking an antidepressant because I was diagnosed with depression at university. And it was one that is notorious for making you gain weight. So when I switched over from being omnivore to vegan, I continued to gain the weight, which was a bit baffling at the time because everybody had told me that I would probably lose weight. It wasn't until kind of a few years in when I finally switched to whole food plant based that I then felt really, really good because I feel like a lot of people have the experience where they go from a standard American diet to a healthy vegan diet and they feel absolutely great. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not what I did. I didn't immediately go to a healthy vegan diet. It was kind of a meh, like a bit of a standard American vegan diet, if you will. But when I did then go whole foods plant based a few years in, I felt absolutely amazing. Probably because I was dropping all of the ultra processed foods and I was paying more attention to my nutrition. I was tracking my food a lot better. And I used an app called Chronometer, which basically includes all of your vitamins, minerals, macros, micros, everything. It's much, much
Mm-hmm.
more extensive than my fitness pal is. So I was able to see then, what I was lacking and what foods I could eat to make up for it. And that's when I finally started to feel amazing physically.
Nice. Yeah, it's actually some people overlook the fact that on the label, for example, like if you get a can of beans, beans are missing one of the essential amino acids, but the protein is there. It's labeled like, oh, I
Mm,
get 20 grams of protein per can or something. And so you need to go to amino acids to figure out. People who don't think about those things, they're not going to know. They're like, I get enough protein. I calculated I get like 100 grams of protein a day from plants. Not guaranteed that you're getting all amino acids. If you count them, you might be unpleasantly surprised. So it's good that you were
yes,
actually
and
on top of that.
yeah, and it's funny you say that because there was a few days when I would put all my food into Chronometer and I would be over my daily protein. So yeah, let's say my daily um, the target for protein might be something like 80 grams, and I'd managed to hit 100 grams that day. Like, oh, awesome! I've got
Hmm.
20% more protein than I needed. But then you look down the list of amino acids, and there's two or three there where you haven't quite hit 100%. And you just kind of think, well, how? Because I've hit way
Hmm.
more protein than I need. Like, what's going on? What am I missing here? And I've only just recently learned about something called the limiting amino acid,
Yeah.
which is that if there are any of the amino acids that you don't get the required amount for, then protein synthesis in your body stops.
Hmm.
So all the amino acids that you can eat, if you're getting 100% of all of them, apart from one, and on one of them you're only getting 50%, then the protein synthesis in your body for all amino acids will be at 50% because that is how much of the limiting amino acid that you got. And my mind was blown when I found out about this because when I look at, because I still track my nutrition now, when I look at my average daily intake, a lot of my amino acids or the vast majority of amino acids, I'm at 200 or 300% of what I need. And absolutely all of them, I'm at least 100%, meaning that protein synthesis in my body is hopefully now working as it should. Whereas before, it probably wasn't because there was one or two amino acids where I hadn't got the required amount for that day because I was just eating the plant foods.
Yeah. And another thing is that I read a bunch of papers on that, and I found that those limiting amino acids, like lysine, methionine, they're also most prone to destruction upon thermal treatment and oxidation. They're prone to oxidation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, of course, you multiply all of those losses by another fudge factor of bioavailability because beans contain tannins, phytic acid, they're like contain lectins, all of that junk, oxalates, and things like that. So all those amino acids, they're not only limiting, they're also most prone to destruction. They're bound to some insoluble carbohydrates. They're thermally unstable. And when you multiply all that, and plus also anti-nutrients, all anti-nutrient factors other than being bound, you multiply by all those coefficients, and the situation looks pretty grim.
Indeed. And there's also the fact that because a lot of the plant proteins, especially in things like beans and nuts and seeds, it's bound to fiber. So this is kind of gross, but you've been to the toilet and you can still
Hmm.
see bits of the plant food in the toilet bowl. Any nutrients that is bound to that bit that's come out the other end, your body has not absorbed because it can't if it hasn't broken down that piece of plant skin or whatever, then it hasn't absorbed the protein or the amino acids or the fat or whatever from that particular bit of plant. So there's also that, it doesn't it's there's all the anti-nutrients, the bioavailability, and the fact that your body simply cannot break down all of the cellulose, all of the fiber, and so you can't access all of the nutrients that's bound to that plant structure there.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's I. You reminded me of vegan videos where they brag about their poops, and so just to sway away a little bit from nutrition, you used to be a vegan activist for some period of time, and what type of activism were you engaged in, and what you yourself were doing particularly?
So I was never one of the sort of loud shouting in the street activists. What I took part in instead was kind of covert activism. So I got hold of things like posters and stickers, and I would go, I laugh about it now, I would go around the supermarket and I would put stickers on the packages of meat. I don't know if you've seen these stickers, they were made mostly by a UK seller. And there were
Mm.
things like there'd be a picture of a cow, and it'd say things like, my name was Chloe and I wanted to live. And I would go and stick that on the packages of ground beef. Or it might be a picture of a pig saying, is my life worth less to you than your taste buds? And I would stick that on the packages of the pork. And I would do that as sneakily as I could to avoid being thrown out of the supermarket. But also, when I had things like posters and leaflets, I would mainly go into public toilets and I would stick them to the back of the toilet door so that when people come to use the toilet, they'd sit down and they get confronted by a big vegan poster. Um, or I would leave leaflets in places where people would see them in the hope that they would pick the leaflets up and give them a read. The only kind of public thing that I occasionally did was I would sometimes put things on my own personal social media accounts, about why eating meat is wrong and things like that. And the other thing I did as well is I would sign a lot of petitions and also share them. So yeah, I guess all of those do count as activism, but
Absolutely.
I would never sort of take part in parades and marches and shout at people in the street. I considered it, I was in a couple of activist group on Facebook and things, and I considered volunteering to go to take a part in like hunt sabbing,
Mhm.
or there was, I can't remember the name of it, but there used to be a group here in the UK. I don't know if they still do it, but I seem to think that they called themselves like the truth tellers or something, and they would stand in the street with a V for Vendetta mask on and hold a laptop or an iPad showing slaughterhouse images, and
Mhm.
they would just stand there and say nothing in the hopes that members of the public would come and watch the footage and then ask questions. And I considered volunteering for that as well, but both of those I never did get round to doing it.
Maybe the weather was bad on those days.
I
And then
think I
just
just chickened out every time. Yeah, pun intended. Yeah, every time I found it too frightening. I didn't want to engage in conflict
I see.
with members of the public, so I just stuck to the covert stuff.
Makes sense. I mean, I understand that it can go anyway in any way. So when you're in public, the crowd in general is pretty spontaneous and but potentially dangerous thing. So I understand that. But again, it's also like quiet activism. I feel like also does a lot, and in terms of infiltrating people's minds. I mean, you probably made bigger impact actually than even some centralized event. where only limited amount of people could see it and participate. So that's interesting though. So now back to food. I noticed that you followed junk vegan diet, whole food vegan diet, low fat vegan diet, supplement based vegan diet, and low sugar vegan diet. So, my question is what made you pursue all of those experiments with nutrition? And what guided your decisions to choose each of those diets? Because you said that you felt really good on whole food vegan diet, but then we see a
Yep.
whole list of things. So, what were those experiments about?
So, I have always grown up in the kind of household where you weren't allowed to leave the table until you'd finished your food. It was towards the healthier end of a standard American diet. So we did eat a lot of like, you know, high carb, high sugar, but I ate better than a lot of my friends at school. So my mum would make the effort to make us eat our vegetables, and we would eat like lots of nice healthy stews and things. Um, she put a bit less effort in when we were teenagers, and we always had free access to crisps or chips, as they're called in America, biscuits, candy, sweets, chocolate, anything that we wanted to eat, we were allowed. Um, so, with that in mind, I kind of grew up with this enormous appetite, and I was quite chubby as a kid. So, when I entered my adulthood, I did so with a bit of an addiction to food and the addiction to feeling full. Like I loved to finish my meals feeling absolutely stuffed. So going through all those different vegan diets were basically experiments to try and kick the habit where I was eating too much food,
I
or I was
see.
also trying to kick my sugar addiction as well. So I tried the low sugar vegan diet for, I think I managed a month, not eating any sugar, not even from fruit, um, because I wanted to try and break the sugar addiction. And of course, all that happened is that when I finally finished the month eating no sugar, I then just binged on sugar because I'd missed it so much. The low fat vegan diet was an attempt at weight loss. So I joined Slimming World, which is like a low fat diet club that's mainly UK based, but I think it is available in other countries now. And they preach low fat everything as a way to lose weight. And I lost a little bit of weight on it. You can do it as a vegan. They have a vegan friendly plan. So I lost a little bit of weight doing that, which I then put back on when I stopped doing that diet. The whole food plant based diet was an attempt because it was back in 2019. I wanted to get really fit and I was going to the gym a lot and I wanted to shed a bit of the excess weight, and it's the one that worked the best. So I was also calorie counting whilst following it. And I shed a lot of weight that year and I did get pretty fit at the gym. And then the supplement based one was kind of in the middle of that. There was a period of time where I was extremely busy with work and other commitments and still trying to go to the gym at the same time. So two of my meals out of every day would be like a meal replacement shake. And the shake I used was called Huel, which is spelled Huel. And it's supposed to have all of your nutrients in. You know, it has an ingredients list as long as your arm. It doesn't taste too bad actually. It's just a powder that you put into either water or milk, and you shake it up and you drink it, and that is your whole meal. And so I would quite often my breakfast would be Huel, and I would eat sort of a small lunch at work, and then I would go to the gym, and my dinner would be Huel as well. And I followed that one for maybe a month or two. Um, but yeah, that that was okay. You know, I found it easier than I thought I would, because it is designed to be quite filling and cover all your protein and your carbohydrates
Mm.
and your fat and all your vitamins and minerals. So it did the trick. It filled my stomach, but by the end of the couple months that I did it, I was very, very sick of it.
Mhm. Interesting. What I was making faces on two spots. First is low fat vegan diet, kind of strikes drives my interest. I want to hear your experience with it. What was wrong? What was your, in general, impression of the community? And second thing, I'm pretty sure like my hand was going to my phone to see if there was one person in my comments that was promoting, I think, Huel, that thing. And when you said it, it rang in my mind that I will
Mm,
check. I think there is a person who nowadays is promoting that substance as like, I mean, the person wants me to go back to vegan diet. So he's advertising that as the complete nutrition
yeah.
source. I will check.
Interestingly, when Huel was first made, it wasn't vegan at first. Um, it was a powder that you had to add a few drops of fish oil to when you made it up. So it didn't start out vegan, but then I guess they realized that they'd be able to market to more people if they made it free from virtually everything. So it's gluten free, it's vegan, it's nut free, I think, and it's really versatile. It comes in loads of different flavors. It's highly processed. It's very ultra processed, but you'd have to have some quite severe, I guess, rare intolerances or allergies not to be able to eat it. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's interesting that lots and lots of vegans love it and they promote it, but it's a little known fact that it didn't actually start out vegan. They used to put fish oil in it.
In terms of low fat diet, how long were you on it?
So I joined Slimming World in March 2017, and I was there until December 2017. So 9 months I was following low fat vegan diet.
What made you quit?
I reached my goal weight.
I
So,
see.
well, no, I tell a lie. I didn't. I cheated my way to my goal weight. So I originally wanted to get my weight down to 150 pounds, which is about 10 stone 10. And towards the end, the diet was getting more and more difficult to maintain.
Hmm.
And so I got to let me think. I'm trying to convert in my head from stones to pounds because in the UK we do stones and pounds. But yeah, so my goal weight was 10 stone 10 and I got to 11 stone 2. Um and suddenly decided, do you know what? That's it. That's my new goal. I'm fed up of this now. I'm gonna call target. I'm gonna tell the group leader that I'm at my target and that I'm um I don't need to lose weight anymore. So she changed my target there and then, and the computer system in the group suddenly said, "Yay, you're at target!" So I got a nice sticker and a certificate, and everybody in the group clapped me. And that was the week before Christmas. And by the time we were the week after Christmas, I'd gained about 80 pounds of it back. So I know, impressive, right? So yeah, I stopped because I was really bored. I was really fed up. It was so hard to maintain. And I was getting so frustrated waiting for my goal weight. So I think 11 stone 2,
You
I
can
think
do
that's six
kilograms if you
pounds.
know.
No, I definitely don't know kilograms now. Um,
I can convert for you if you want.
so
So 11 point what?
11 stone 2. It's, hang on. I know that there's 14. We're so
So
weird in
it's
the UK. There's 14 pounds in a stone. Um, okay, so I was 6 pounds above what my original goal weight was. So
$156.
yes, I wanted to be 150 pounds, and it's when I got to 156 pounds that I was like, right, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've decided that this is my new goal weight.
You quit the low fat adventure. But you know what? I want to ask you, maybe before we dig in a little bit more. You said that you were on a supplement based diet, right? So, supplement based, as I defined it in the survey, I defined it as the diet that nutritionally relies on some meal replacement powders, protein powders, whatever, pills, and then, like, for example, some other foods like whole foods, they serve more like it's like some supplemental decorative part of nutrition, basically. But the core of nutrition comes from those nutritional powders. So that's what supplement based diet is. But I want to ask you, do you think that supplements really work on a vegan diet?
No,
Okay.
no. So the protein powders, the meal replacement shakes, all of that, they are all very processed. They're all ultra processed food. Um, which it's not what your body is made to digest. It's not bioavailable. And you tend to find that with most ultra processed foods, um, that aren't serving to be, you know, a dessert or a treat or something. So I guess they won't do this with cakes, but food where it's supposed to be a staple of your diet, like ultra processed bread or protein powder or meal replacement shakes, the food has been processed to the extent that it's lost most of its nutrition. So then they have to add back all of the nutrients that they've stripped out during the manufacturing process. And supplemented and fortified nutrients are not as bioavailable, um, because they've been made in a lab. They're not coming from whole food, which is not what our bodies have been designed to digest. So it's not good for your digestive system, and it's not enjoyable. And that goes for, um, pills as well.
Hmm.
It's quite hard to find supplements that are based on whole food. You can get a few where it's like various forms of powdered whole food in a capsule, but most of them are just pressed powders that have been pressed into the shape of a pill that have been made in a factory, which is not nearly as bioavailable as the nutrients you'll get from food. I guess with supplement based vegan diet, it's okay for a very short period of time. Or, if you, I guess if you've got one day a week where it's going to be impossible for you to cook something and sit
Hmm.
down and eat it because you've got to fly from one activity to the next, grabbing a shake on the way is better than eating no food. But it can't be your main form of eating for a long, long period of time without you suffering consequences, in my personal opinion.
I see. So you don't support the idea that you can just get a very very good multivitamin and it be kind of malnourished and
Um,
and have no trouble.
no, I absolutely don't. And I did at first, I just kind of thought, well, you know, if all I have to do to not eat animals is supplement B12, then I could cut out the middle cow and that's all I can do. And then a few months in, I learned about the omega 3s, as we discussed before, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll take that. I'll just get it directly from where the fish get it from. I'll get it from the algae." Um, and it seemed like every year that I went by on veganism, another supplement was added because, maybe a year or so after the omega 3s, I then learned that, oh, actually, I can't get vitamin D year round in the UK because we live in the Northern Hemisphere. So I guess I better take that. And it's okay because everybody in the UK should be taking it anyway. And then the year after that, I think it was iodine. And it was, oh, it's difficult to get iodine on a vegan diet. Oh, it's okay. I'll just take that. And by the time I was done with veganism, I was on 12 different supplements, at least, that I can count off the top of my head. Because when I was in end stage veganism, I was trying to get pregnant, and I suffered a series of early miscarriages. And when I went to see a private gynecologist about this, we discussed supplements, and she knew that I was vegan. She didn't say that it was bad. She didn't say that it was good either. She was kind of indifferent about it. And she gave me a list of supplements that I could take to help support my body to maintain a pregnancy. Um, and it was things that you can get if you eat an omnivorous diet. So things like coenzyme Q10, which is present in a lot of organ meats. And she also recommended that I take, um, I think it was like a vitamin B complex or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I got recommended N-acetylcysteine. I got recommended um, some kind of fatty acid, and I cannot remember the name of it now. But I was taking so many supplements when I was trying to conceive, but I had about 10 alarms on my phone because I know that taking certain nutrients with other nutrients can block the absorption. So if you take calcium too close to iron, for example, the calcium will block the absorption of the iron.
Hmm.
So I spaced my supplements out over the course of the day so as not to have the nutrients blocking each other. So I had all these alarms on my phone so I would remember to take each one, and I would take them a certain amount of time apart. Um, and even when I was doing all that, there was still some nutrients that I was missing. So very, very early on in my trying to conceive journey, I learned about choline, which is present in high amounts in eggs and also in organ meats. So I was like, oh, okay, where can I get choline as a vegan? And it turns out that in the UK at that time, nobody was making any choline supplements. So I was taking sunflower lecithin because that has got choline in it. So that was yet another powder that I was adding to my diet to try and get the required amount of choline in a day. Um, and even whilst doing all of that, because I was also taking a number of other things. I was taking iron, I was taking vitamin C with the iron to improve the absorption. I was taking goodness knows what else. And when I eventually was pregnant, I was still anemic for a large part of my pregnancy. So that kind of made me a bit crazy because I was like, I'm taking all of these things and I'm taking them with the things you should be taking with. So, for example, taking the iron with the vitamin C, and I'm spacing them all apart, and I'm timing them with my food. It was like a whole exercise in and of itself to kind of figure out when to take all of these supplements um, and get the timing right. Um, so yeah, looking back, no, I don't think you can replace a healthy whole food omnivorous diet with supplements at all. And I'm sad looking back that I got to the stage that I was taking sort of at least 12 supplements over the course of a day and taking them round the clock, following all these alarms, timing my food with them, and I still didn't realize, still didn't get it.
Well, we all know that you just did the vegan diet wrong.
Yeah, right.
It's- when I started researching choline subject, because yeah, vegans like to say that choline is harmful. It's harmful nutrient, even though as I learned that it's vital. It's more vital for sustaining pregnancy and for child health than folate, which folic acid has been like praised for as super essential for pregnant women. So yeah, with choline, you need to eat 2.5 cups of dry soy flour per day to get the daily dose of choline on a vegan diet,
Yep. Or
multiplied
you
by
have,
bioavailability.
yep. Or you can drink many, many cups of soy milk, which I was trying to do, or you can take sunflower lecithin, like I was doing. Luckily, it doesn't have too bad a taste, and I would
Mhm.
have a big smoothie on a morning, like a big fertility smoothie, and I would put I think I put like 2 tablespoons of sunflower lecithin in, and because sunflower lecithin is used in the food industry as an emulsifier, it made my smoothies really, really smooth. So they were great smoothies. Everything was emulsified together, but again,
Mhm.
probably not as good for me as just eating some eggs.
Yeah, I think so. I just when I think about the difference between how the brain in general, because it's very vital for brain. I remember when I spent several months on animal-based regimen with a lot of eggs. I was at first I had some just egg craziness. I would like eat 8 eggs per day at first, and
Wow.
it was like such a in the like some cognitive
Yeah.
abilities.
Eggs was my gateway drug as well. That's what I went back to when I finally stopped
Mhm.
the veganism, and I cover this in a because as I say, I've been writing notes. I do cover this in the question why did I quit veganism? But it was ultimately pregnancy that made me quit, and it was the eggs. Just eating the eggs kind of made my brain explode
But like you
in a
mentioned
good
that,
way.
yeah, you mentioned those pretty like unfortunate, and I understand, but probably was very sensitive time for you. Your attempt to get like pregnant and have successful pregnancy that changed your mind ultimately on veganism and made you convert. But was there anything else that was leading up to the point of your understanding that vegan diet might not be the thing?
Um,
Was it the only thing, or did you observe any other things coming up to that point that were concerning?
so I put in my survey that I had been having doubts for about 2 years,
Yes,
and
it was a long time.
it's kind of complicated because there's almost like two parts where I quit veganism. The first was when I went pregnant and I ate eggs throughout my pregnancy because I had a huge craving for them and I decided to listen to my body. But once I gave birth, I then went back to being vegan
Mm.
for another 9 months. And it was 9 months after birth that I finally quit veganism for good. So I've officially like I count the 9.5 years being vegan as ending last October, which means that I've been ex-vegan for a year.
Mm-hmm.
But
I see.
I put over 2 years that I've been on my recovery because the over 2 years includes the time when I was pregnant and I was eating eggs, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I'm like a two-time ex-vegan. Um, but yeah, the 2 years of doubts kind of started when my partner and I had a daughter, and I my I'm in a same-sex relationship, so my
Mm-hmm.
partner carried our daughter, and I carried our son, and she had a few problems. Like she was born premature, and she struggled whilst she was in the NICU and also afterwards for a long time with gaining weight. And we were trying our absolute hardest to give her a nutritious, high fat, high calorie vegan diet when we weaned her. Um, and we even had kind of help and support from a dietitian. And the
Mm-hmm.
dietitian um, didn't tell us to quit veganism. She just tried to support us as best she could um, with being vegan and also raising our daughter. So in the end, when she still failed to gain weight, the dietitian said, "Oh, well, I guess just give her loads of dessert and loads of puddings and sweets after." I know, right? After you've finished feeding her, and all that's done is given her a sweet tooth.
My brain's
Um,
going to explode in a
look,
bad way right now.
I know, right? Veganism is very much supported by the UK NHS. Uh, Lots of doctors are either indifferent or supportive of it. It's seen as very healthy. It's seen as appropriate for all stages of life as long as you plan it well. And that is exactly what we did with our daughter. We tried everything. And it turns out, when she was about 18 months old, she got really fussy, like quite a lot of children do at that age. She started picking at her food and rejecting a lot of what we gave her. So we were trying to then cram as much calories as we could in her with the food that she would eat. And that is when the first kind of doubt started. Because I found myself thinking, well, we're giving her, right now she's eating a vegan cheese sandwich. Whereas if that was real cheese, she would be getting protein and calcium. But because it's vegan cheese, she's just getting fat because vegan cheese is just made out of coconut oil and starches and flavorings.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember voicing these concerns to my partner, and I didn't take them seriously enough. So I was kind of thinking, oh, but she's probably fine. We can make up the calcium and the protein in other areas, and we might give her some fake ham. And again, the doubts would creep in, and I'd find myself thinking, but if this was just real ham, it would have this in it, and it would have this, and it would have this. And I would then shut those, most of the time, I would shut the doubts down myself inside my own head. And she'd be like, no, it's fine, it's fine. When she gets bigger, she'll eat more, or when we find tasty enough food, she'll eat enough of it. And um, that's when they first started. And we, I had our son when she was just shy of 2.5 years old. So yeah, I guess the doubts started creeping in when she was about 18 months old. And um, they were very, very high during pregnancy. But I genuinely thought that just eating eggs during pregnancy was going to be a temporary thing. So even though I wasn't vegan while I was pregnant, I kind of, in my mind, still count that as part of my vegan journey because I intended to stop eating the eggs once I'd given birth, and it was just for a bit of extra nutritional support while I was pregnant, and that I would go right back to being vegan. And as I say before, that's exactly what I did until my son was 9 months old.
I see. So, and you went back vegan. Okay. And then, like, I just, that's actually a very interesting twist for me because how do you go back and forth in that did you not feel satisfied eating eggs? Did you not feel convinced enough that they were a good thing for you, or like
Um, yes, I did. I did, but it's complicated because even though the bubble had burst, I think, with pregnancy and with the overwhelming desire to eat eggs. But I think in some ways I'm kind of a slow learner, and when I've got hold of an idea, it's difficult for me to let it go.
I see,
Plus, plus my partner is still vegan
I see,
and
makes sense.
was not very happy about me eating eggs when I was pregnant. So once I'd given birth, I then was like, it's okay. I'll just go back to being vegan. You know, we'd agreed to raise the kids vegan, and it just seemed like a much more harmonious decision to um to go back. But those last 9 months were honestly torture because I for the whole 9 months that was when I was feeling very strongly like I don't like this, I don't want to be vegan anymore. But I guess that's also when those doubts were at their strongest. It's also when the guilty feelings and the counter arguments in my own brain were at their strongest as well. You know, the things like, well, you're just not trying hard enough, or you just need to find the right supplement, you just need to eat, you need to combine your food better, you know, you need to stick at this, you can't quit now,
Hmm.
especially because your family's vegan. So yeah, I I knew, like looking back, I knew all along that it wasn't going to be sustainable, but I dug my heels in and I very stubbornly tried my hardest to go back.
That's that probably the this like ending debating phase of veganism is the hardest on the mind. And it's like such a terror because you feel like you are deceiving yourself in a way. At the same
Yes,
time,
yes, exactly.
it's you're torn between the concept that you consider to be a truth for yourself, that you see a lot of confirmation from outside as well, especially when you're surrounded by community that supports that. I remember when I was raw vegan, I remember everybody was like, "Oh my God, you eat so healthy. Oh my God, you look so healthy. Oh my God, your hair is so good. Everything is so good. Everything is so perfect. You are just like keep going." Basically, everybody was just praising that lifestyle, and I understood that I cannot do it. I'm deceiving myself. Something is off. I see the problems. People don't see the problems that I see, and people don't feel the problems that I feel. And it was a really hard time mentally.
Mm,
So in your case, I imagine it was like million thousand times harder because you also had. I mean, I guess during pregnancy there is some more. It's kind of like instinctual part of the body. I guess wakes up a little bit stronger, demands things stronger,
yes,
bypassing your judgments, and then the battle must have been really hard for you. It's not.
it was because I feel as well like I was given a huge gift when I was pregnant, and that is the gift of intuition. So when every time I was pregnant, I knew I was pregnant before any test would have been able to tell me so. And I was right every single time. And I also knew whenever I was going to miscarry the baby as well. And again, I was right every single time. And when I was pregnant with my son, um, I knew we decided not to find out the sex of the baby till the baby was born, but I knew he was going to be a boy. I would dream about the baby, I would dream about the pregnancy, and I also had several kind of unintentional but very, very powerful meditations where I would journey. Again, unintentionally, I was trying to meditate to quiet my mind, and I'd find myself going on these incredible journeys where I was meeting people that had died. So I spoke with my nana several times in these meditations. And I met these children who I didn't know who they were. And I now know that they were my son and my niece, who, because my sister and I were pregnant at the same time. And getting the gift of these meditations and these dreams kind of shocked me and scared me into listening to my body. So I didn't start eating the eggs until I was about 10 weeks pregnant. But the dreams started pretty much straight away, like from the moment I conceived. And it kind of kicked me up the backside enough to be like, look, you have this inner knowing. Like you can call it woo woo, call it whatever you want, but it's coming from somewhere and it keeps turning out to be correct. So now that you're having this deep, instinctual, intuitive feeling to eat eggs, you need to listen to it. And so I did. And when I ate eggs while I was pregnant, it felt amazing. I must have eaten a dozen eggs every week. And I would eat them at work until I stopped going to work for the last 6 weeks of my pregnancy, and then I did bring them home for a bit. Um, but like I annoyed my colleagues because I would cook them in the microwave. Like there's a way you can poach eggs in the microwave, and it used to stink up the office. So my colleagues used to moan at me about it, but I
Mhm.
ate so many of them, and I got so much energy just from these eggs. Um, and I can't believe that when I then gave birth and was breastfeeding, I kind of was like, nah, I'll be fine without them now. And I was just so wrong.
So you mentioned, by the way, two stories about medical system. Do you have any other stories interacting with the doctors? Because it kind of shocked me. I mean, I understand it probably that I think doctors cannot intervene with your life. They cannot like judge your lifestyle choices, I guess, in accordance to their ethics. I rarely hear the cases when doctors explicitly tell people that you're eating meat. Like you're leaving my office and you're eating meat. I
Mm,
think they have to kind of respect your choices and they have probably protocols for how to handle vegans. Do you have any other like
yes.
encounters like that? Because I guess through pregnancy you were going to the doctor for checkups and stuff.
Yeah. So I didn't tell any doctors that I was vegan during pregnancy because I wasn't. I think only one midwife asked for my dietary info, and I just said I was vegetarian. And she didn't question it. Um, the vast majority of interactions that I had with doctors throughout the time that I was vegan, um, like I said before, they were either indifferent, so they just didn't question it and didn't say anything, or they were supportive. I had back pain once and I went to see a chiropractor, and the chiropractor was practically celebrating it. She was like, "Oh, it's music to my ears to hear that." So she was super happy that I was vegan.
Mhm.
I have a different chiropractor now who is total opposite view. Um, but this chiropractor was really happy. The only time I ever got a doctor say anything was this was way before I was pregnant, but I've been on and off anemic my entire life, even when I was a teenager and I was eating meat in my parents' home. And one of the doctors just said, "You need to eat more red meat." And when I said, "Oh, well, I don't eat meat," the doctor said, "Well, you need to start."
Mhm.
And when I was breastfeeding, my son had a tongue tie, and there was a short period of time where he didn't gain weight very well. We quickly resolved that, but the period of time where he wasn't gaining weight very well, the doctor kind of ran a few tests on him to make sure everything was normal, with his metabolism and things. And the doctor kind of said to me, "Remember, you need to drink a lot of dairy milk to make good breast milk." And I just didn't say anything in response because I know that that's not true. Even now as an ex-vegan, I know that
Mhm.
you don't need to drink
Mhm.
dairy milk to make good breast milk. Yeah, it doesn't literally go from your stomach straight to your breasts. So that's not true. But yeah, he had responded to me saying that I was vegan by being like, "Oh no, you have to drink cow's milk in order to make breast milk." So that one kind of made me laugh. But yeah, literally over the 9.5 years, those were the only two doctors that ever said you probably shouldn't be vegan. The
Mhm.
rest of them either said nothing or were supportive of it.
Yeah. I also had a doctor who was prescribing me leafy greens and legumes to treat iron deficient anemia.
Yeah,
It's,
like you weren't already eating enough of them.
yeah, it was a stellar solution, of course. It's
Yeah. I
with
genuinely think that they're not allowed to say anything
Mhm.
over here in the UK because there is an NHS page that fully supports veganism. The stance in the NHS is, that it's suitable for all stages of life as long as it's appropriately planned. And even getting nutritional support for our daughter from a literal dietitian, she didn't say don't do this. She just said, "Oh well, how about we try this supplement, or how about we try giving her lots of sweets and fat and yeah,
Mm.
ridiculous advice like that." So it's quite shocking, really, that nobody at any point thought to say to me, "Maybe your diet's the issue here." Not even the fertility doctor when I was struggling to conceive said, "Maybe you should look at your diet."
Hmm. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, with that, I think I read somewhere that doctor cannot recommend you any dietary protocol, even if it's like super reasonable thing. I think they cannot do this because the efficacy of the treatment will depend on your diligence of following that. So, if a doctor doesn't prescribe you a pill but prescribes you a diet, then unless, I don't know, you are administered to some institution where this diet is like the only option that you have, I think that that kind of like removes their liability for success of treatment. But then interestingly, they support supplements. Who regulates supplements?
I
They're
know,
not
right?
regulated, they're not drugs.
Yeah, it's silly, isn't it? But I think you have a point there about, if they don't prescribe something like a dietary change, then you can't fail to stick to it, and they then can't be liable. So maybe that's the reason why. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, another thing that makes me kind of infuriated, you said that that's what you said, that they see vegan diet as healthy, but they see a child who is not gaining weight. Among other things, I guess there probably were some things that they could notice. Some things that could be better if nutritional
Mm,
intervention was performed. So they
I
see the
know.
diet the diet as good, but they see the evidence of it not working.
Yeah,
Question.
I know. I know. It's shocking, really. And to this day, I still feel immensely guilty about the start that our children had because my daughter was vegan until she was 3. And my son was vegan until he was 9 months old. So he's done a lot better because, he was breastfed for 6 months, and then he was weaned on the vegan food, but he only had that for 3 months before I then introduced dairy and eggs and meat for the kids. So, you know, I try not to dwell on it because
Yeah, I mean,
when you know better, you do better. And I just didn't know that it wasn't the right thing
humans
because
are
of all the
incredibly resilient. It's okay.
yeah. And
It's
she's doing great now.
yeah,
She's 4 now, and she's amazing.
yeah. That's I mean, I want to comfort you because I don't think that it's worth dwelling on really, but it's just remembering that humans are the most resilient animals on the planet. It's literally our core, our evolution brought us to this point, and we can handle a lot before we break, before it's too late, before anything happens. So it's all fine.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
so I have this question. I don't know if it's time for it. Okay, after everything you've gone through, a vegan person comes and asks you, what did you try doing to remain vegan during that whole period? I've been vegan for 20 plus years now, and I'm the happiest and healthiest ever. People always tell me that I look at least 30 years younger than my age. You did it wrong, and you're blaming veganism instead of your own mistakes and lack of understanding of nutrition. I cannot believe that the only thing you could think of, was to resort to animal cruelty. Why did eating meat appear to be the only solution to you? Have you tried any supplements, meal replacement powders, increasing your protein intake, increasing your calorie count, adaptogens, spirulina and chlorella, CMOS, boiling some broccoli, doing a blood work and doing nutritionist consultations, watching Dominion after all? How would you react to that? What would you respond?
Oh, I love this question because in the ex-vegan forum on Reddit, I've actually had several people say to me that I did it all wrong. And when you look at their profile, they've been vegan for like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And it's like, dude, I was vegan for nearly 10 years. Like, so yeah, in an ideal world, I would love to sit down with this person, make them a hot drink, and settle down for a long and hopefully respectful conversation because there's a lot to that question. But I will try to answer in as short as an answer I can. Um, so first of all, I used to think exactly like the person in the question. When I was vegan, I read articles about a few celebrities giving up veganism for health reasons. And I remember thinking that it was all bullshit, that they just didn't try hard enough. and they didn't find the right regime or the right supplements. They didn't work with a dietitian or a doctor properly. And I genuinely thought that this diet is for everyone, that there is not a single chronic health condition out there or a single fitness regime or anything that the vegan diet cannot support. So with that in mind, as if I'm speaking to the person in the question, with that in mind, please, firstly, try to be humble, try to be open-minded, because one day it might be you. Secondly, yes, I did try everything that you're suggesting and more. I tried the adaptogens, I tried the spirulina, which by the way is disgusting. I tried wheatgrass, I tried the protein powders, I tried the supplements, I tried everything. And I even went and got regular blood work done with my doctor. And apart from mild iron deficiency anemia, it never ever showed anything up. The important thing to realize about getting regular blood work is that blood tests are a very inaccurate way of assessing your nutritional status with certain nutrients. So I'll use calcium as an example. Calcium is a mineral that is vitally important to your body. And if you have too much or too little of it in your blood, you will die. Okay, because it's used to make your heart beat. So getting a calcium blood test done to show your calcium status is useless, because if you have too little calcium for your metabolism and your heartbeat to function, your body will pull calcium. Yeah, it will pull calcium out of your skeleton and out of your teeth. So just getting a blood test for your calcium, all it shows you is that you're not dead. Okay, it doesn't show you whether you have enough calcium. And it's the same with a bunch of other nutrients as well. So you can get all the blood tests in the world and it can show that your nutritional status is perfect, and it can be inaccurate with a lot of the nutrients. So I think all of the things that the person put in that question can all be summarized by the following. The genus Homo, okay, like as in Homo sapiens, has been around for approximately 2 to 3 million years. Homo sapiens have been around for about 350,000 years. And for the vast, vast, vast majority of that time, we have been Homo. And for all of the time we've been Homo sapien, we have been eating meat. Okay, we are built to eat meat, and indeed we need animal products. We've evolved this way. And our physiology shows this in various ways, such as in our digestive system, we have a lack of a cecum. Okay, it's now called an appendix in humans. We have extremely strong stomach acid. The length of our colon doesn't correspond with the length of that of herbivores, etc., etc. Our physiology is different even to our very closest relatives from the ape world, who, by the way, are also omnivores. So chimpanzees and gorillas are omnivores, but they're just much more heavily plant-based than us. But our physiology is different even to those. Like, we don't have the physiology of a frugivore or of a herbivore. And it's also important to note that we've evolved with cooking. So when vegans want to say things like we lack sharp teeth and claws and the ability to digest raw meat, it's because the whole time, or nearly all the time we've been eating meat, we've also been cooking the meat as well. So humans are extremely unique in our physiology in that we are omnivores, but we are processivore omnivores. Okay, so we have literally evolved to eat meat, but to use fire to cook the meat. So evolving whilst eating all of that stuff doesn't have a negligible effect on our physiology. It makes our physiology. So over those millions of years and over those hundreds of thousands of years that we've been Homo sapiens, our DNA has changed in ways to make us into the humans that we are today, which need and thrive on meat. So meat and other animal products and cooking are built into our DNA. So in the same way that a ruminant animal evolved a 4-chambered stomach and complex fermentation process to digest grasses, we evolved to digest cooked omnivore food. So a cow would do extremely badly on an all-meat diet, and a cat would do extremely badly being fed just grass. We can eat both being omnivores, but it's not optimal to eat only one. We need both for optimal health, and it varies person to person. So some people can eat a high amount of plants and a low amount of animal food. Some people are the opposite and they need a high amount of animal foods and a low amount of plants. Some people can thrive only on meat and some can thrive only on plants, but very, very few. They're the exception to the rule. most people need a good mix. And that is part of the reason why humans have been so successful evolutionary, because we're extremely adaptable. You know, in periods of time where there's been little to no plant material available, like in the Ice Age, then we can just eat animals. And in during periods of time when there's no animals available because, they might have all died out, or, we're struggling for whatever reason, then we can just eat plants. But it is rarely sustainable forever. We will survive just eating plants or animals, but we will rarely thrive. And it is this ability to survive the scarcity for long periods of time, eating a very limited diet whilst waiting for the food availability to improve, that's led humans to be so successful. But we can rarely do it forever. And the final thing I want to say, given that this person has listed a bunch of supplements in their question, if you need to take supplements, then the diet by its very nature is not natural, it's not sustainable, and it is not correct.
It's a medicated diet. It's like no different
Indeed.
from suffering consequence of some crappy diet that leads to a bunch of comorbidities needing to take pills. It's the
Exactly.
same.
So if I
You just
didn't
take
have
pills
the
for
whole
different cause.
afternoon, yeah, right, exactly. So if I didn't have the whole afternoon with this person, then that's
Mhm.
the answer I would give them. That we are quite literally built by our DNA, by our evolution, to eat a mixed omnivore diet that includes cooked animal foods and cooked plant foods.
Yeah. So we started talking about evolution, and what it made me think of is that it seems like in the vegan rhetoric, they always like to say that now we have access to these foods, we can adapt and stuff like that to eating exclusively this diet. Everyone, no matter who it is, no matter where they are, it's suitable for everyone and such. They forget the scale of evolution. How many millennia it took for humans to come to the point where they can do all this reasoning? Because
Exactly. And yeah, go on.
evolutionary changes, they don't happen within a lifetime of one given individual. You cannot just do that. You literally need to go through the sift of genetic selection for millennia to get some trait solidified and propagated. You cannot just like, okay, I will reproduce now and my next generation will have some new evolutionary adaptation. It doesn't work like that. It's totally different
Absolutely
scale of
not.
it. Like since we even formed this Homo sapiens as like the original kinds, we split into races even. We have already built up on top of Homo sapiens into adapting to new regional features because the climate drastically changed amidst our development. Not only we developed into a separate species with different brain capacity and different gut structure, we also individually branched out into a bunch of regional subspecies, so to speak. Some like not subspecies strictly, but we developed to have unique adaptations to very diverse climatic regions. And I mean, we all know that people up north, they won't eat plant based. They don't have resources for that. And it took them also millennia to adapt to that way of eating. And actually, you mentioned the carbohydrates and the plants and the meat, for example. They drink blood. All people that live near the north, like polar circle, for example, they drink blood. Blood contains sugars in it. So they're not carb
Yes,
free.
they
Well,
do.
this.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, cultures where they have been eating majority animal based because of where they live, um, they don't just eat, steak. They will
Mm-hmm,
eat the entire animal. They eat nose to tail, and they drink, like you say, they drink the blood. And when you eat an animal that way, you do you can get all of your nutrients. And it's the same, if you go towards the equator, there are tribes that live near the equator that eat majority plant based. And they have evolved to do that because that is what they can most easily access. Um, so they do fine on a majority plant-based diet as well. So I'm doing a lot of research at the moment about you know traditional diets, but also um, what different parts of the world have traditionally eaten. And so I'm curious as to what my ancestors will have eaten.
mm-hmm,
Um, if I go back far enough, I live in the UK, and my family going back generations lives in the UK, and so I'm aware of what the traditional UK diet is. But I want to go back further than that if I can manage it, and I'm considering sort of doing some genetic testing. Um, to find out where my DNA is from because you can't see because I'm not on video, but I have very red hair. So the origin for ginger/red hair is Scandinavia. So I think that if I go back far enough, using maybe some DNA testing from maybe something like 23andMe, it might show that some of my DNA is Scandinavian. And in which case I could then start exploring that avenue as well. Like, oh well, what would my ancestors from even further back have eaten? Um, and it certainly won't have been, pineapples shipped from halfway around the world and avocados shipped from Mexico and rice shipped from Asia. And, because I guess that's the thing with the vegan diet, isn't it? You cannot, when you go vegan, you cannot follow, or very rarely can you follow a traditional diet as your ancestors would have eaten and just do it vegan because you have to rely on food that is shipped from around the world
Hmm.
in order to meet all your nutritional requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? I recently learned that even your ability to digest resistant starches changes from ethnos to ethnos, or it's even like, I don't know if it's ethnic predetermined, but some groups of people, they will struggle to digest resistant starches. Some people will
Hmm.
thrive off eating things with resistant starches, like those sweet potatoes, notorious sweet
Yeah.
potatoes. For some people, it
Yeah.
will just bring discomfort. It's
Yeah.
gastric upset.
And
So, such
various
nuances.
right, and various different cultures in Asia and Africa traditionally for most of their history have not consumed milk past infancy, so they lost the ability to make the lactase enzyme into adulthood, and they are virtually all lactose intolerant. So that kind of is a stark example of how your ancestry and your DNA influences your everyday life. So if you live in an area where the majority of you are lactose intolerant, even if you're all now trying to drink milk, it's not working because your ancestors just did not drink milk, and your body will not hold on to things that are useless. Hence, we
Mhm.
no longer have cecum, and it's become the appendix because we don't use it anymore because we don't need it to digest leaves and grass and things. So our bodies got rid of it. And, in cultures where they do not drink milk, their bodies were like, well, there's no point using energy on this enzyme when we don't use it anymore. So
Mhm.
they got rid of the lactase enzyme. So I'm now super interested, in ancestral diets and what my ancestors would have eaten because I feel like following that kind of train of thought might lead me to feeling like I'm thriving a lot better if I am eating the food that my own personal DNA is built to eat.
Man, if Russia wasn't in conflict with literally every Western country, if they only had DNA data to sell to some American corporation, because I already did DNA testing, but it just shows me Russia. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks. Russia and adjacent territories. Very informative. But I would like more details. You know,
Mm.
when you when you analyze someone with European heritage, they show like, oh, you're from this province in Italy. Thanks. And I'm like, Russia.
Yeah.
Hard
Like
to
I
say.
haven't got around to doing mine yet, but I'm intrigued to know where the red hair has come from. Like
Mm-hmm.
my maiden surname as well is Scottish, so but I don't have any immediate Scottish family members, so I guess I'll go a little bit further back and it'll be like, oh look, Scotland, and then
Mm-hmm.
I think if I went back far enough, be like, ah, there we go, Scandinavia, because as you may know, the UK got invaded by um by the Scandinavians
Mm-hmm.
via Scotland and Ireland, which is where we have a lot of redheads at the moment. So yeah, I think I can't be sure till I actually get the test done, but I think that's what it's going to show.
I heard that out there they ate a lot of sea moss.
Yeah, I've actually never tried sea moss. Like that's the one thing from that list of supplements in the hypothetical vegan question that I didn't try. But I did try the other ones, the chlorella and the
Mm.
spirulina and the wheatgrass, and they all taste awful. Honestly, spirulina is one of the worst things I've ever tasted in my entire life. I can't describe quite how vile it is. And for weeks at a time, I would choke it down on a morning because I thought that it held all the answers and that it would boost my iron. I used to mix it with blackstrap molasses to make it taste even worse, so that I could try and get some plant iron, and it just didn't work.
It's crazy. Oh my god, yeah, CMOS, I don't know, just for fulfilling curiosity, maybe, but depending on how it was produced, it will taste either like nothing or it will taste like, I don't know. My analogy was when I lived in the dorm as a student, I washed the like toilet with chlorine solution, and
Oh yeah,
the smell that would be in the bathroom afterwards. That's how CMOS tastes, basically.
wow. So it tastes like how bleach smells.
Yeah, and I remember I was mixing it, blending it with pineapple as smoothie, and for some time it averted me from pineapple. So a pineapple, I could not eat pineapples afterwards for some time. I needed to take a break because all I could think of was that there must be some sea moss lurking in this. This
It's
bad.
crazy what we do, right? What we
Mm-hmm.
did to try and make veganism sustainable.
Mm-hmm. But eating corpses is much more intense, isn't it?
Mm.
So,
And I used to use that to describe it as well. Whenever I would go to the supermarket and walk down the meat aisle to get somewhere else, um, I would say, to whoever I was with, like, ugh, the corpse aisle. Like,
yeah,
which is it's just a silly thing to say because if anything, like corpse is a uniquely human word, right? If anything, if you have a whole dead animal in front of you, it's not a corpse, it's a carcass. So if anything, it was the carcass aisle. But, being being me, I read it somewhere and I thought that sounds cool. I'm going to say that, and so I did. I used to walk down the meat aisle and call it the corpse aisle.
every word is a human word technically. But yeah,
Technically, yeah.
on you quitting veganism for good, I guess.
Mm.
The day that you left veganism, what was it like? What were you feeling? What were you eating? How were you feeling? What was happening on that day? Was it rewarding afterwards or was it awkward?
So I'd already decided that I wasn't going to be vegan forever. I'd already decided this isn't going to work anymore. And I was just kind of thinking, how the heck am I going to go about this? Because it means leaving everything behind that I've been doing for nearly 10 years. It means telling my partner, what the heck am I going to do? And in the UK, and I don't know if they do this in other countries, but in the UK, every few months, McDonald's runs a competition, they call it the Monopoly competition. And when you buy fries or soda or a burger from McDonald's, you get these stickers on the side and you peel the stickers to see if you've won a prize. And you can get vegan burgers at McDonald's in the UK. Okay, so we must have been to McDonald's in some weeks previously, and I'd been collecting these stickers, and I always put them in this little like drinks holder in my car. And then every now and then I look through them all and see if I've won anything. And the most I've ever won is like a free burger or something. And I had one of the stickers and it said a free McPlant or quarter pounder with cheese. And I thought, well, I'm hungry. I'm going to go get myself a McPlant. And I drove through the drive through. I can remember it. And I picked this sticker up and I said to the person at the drive-through, "Oh, I have one of the Monopoly stickers to pay for this. If that is that okay?" And she said, "Yeah, that's fine." She said,
Mhm.
"What would you like?" And I found myself reading a quarter pounder with cheese, please. Like I didn't even know what I was saying, and I was like, "What?" And my brain was kind of going, "What? What are you doing? Like you were supposed to order a McPlant. What the heck are you doing?" And by then it was too late. I went to the next drive-through window and I got handed this quarter pounder of cheese. And I, at first, I didn't look at it. I just kind of took the bag out of this woman's hand. I put it on the seat next to me and I drove for about 15 minutes just to some place I knew. And I could smell it. And I was thinking, what have I done? Like, I've ordered a beef burger with like a quarter pounder with cheese. What the hell have I done? And I parked up and I was like, well, I guess I'll put it in the bin because I don't want to eat it. But before I do that, I'm going to unwrap it and have a look at it. And I sat there with this burger in my hand, and this sounds so cliche. I know it does, but this is literally what happened. Um, I looked at it in my hand and I could smell it, and it didn't smell as revolting as I expected it to. and it didn't look as revolting as I expected it to. So I was like, well, what the hell? It was free. There's no point putting it in the bin because it's wasting food. So I bit it, and nothing happened at first. I was like, oh, that doesn't taste so bad. You know, it. I can kind of remember what these used to taste like. And then I ate the whole thing, and I had a kind of momentary sensation of like, ugh, I just ate a dead body,
But then I
followed by
returned to
this.
the drive-through.
Yeah,
Then
well, I didn't return to the drive-through because I didn't have another sticker for a free burger. But I had this momentary like, oh my God, I just ate a dead body,
Mhm.
followed by this most amazing like euphoria. This like, oh my God, I've done it. I've done it. I've left it behind. I'm no longer vegan, and I never will be again. And and my I didn't have any stomach problems whatsoever. It's almost like my brain lit up, and I had a momentary guilty, gross feeling, but I also just felt amazing. And then I put the wrapper in the bin, and I got back in my car, and I went about my day. And from then on, every day I would go and, get something that was animal product related. I think it was the day after that I told my partner. I didn't hide it for very long. Um, because we don't have that kind of relationship where we sneak around and hide things from each other. So pretty soon after that, animal products were in the house. But
Mhm.
yeah, that is the day I left veganism for good, and that is what happened.
I see. So I said no negative reactions from the body.
No,
No.
no,
Because I read sometimes
surprisingly.
because I go on vegan subreddit or ex-vegan subreddit, and there are some vegans who consider quitting. They write their concerns that they're scared to try it because they've been vegan for a long period of time. What if they eat it and something bad happens and such? So it's another data point. So thank you for sharing, especially after a long time. I know that I
Yeah.
received several comments from people who were I'm not quite sure what type of vegan diet they're following. Maybe they're low fat. I don't know. But they say that they feel a lot of heaviness of treating animal foods. So they
Hmm.
struggle to get back to eating them. But it's not so frequent, I would say.
Yeah, that's surprisingly hasn't happened with me. If anything, I felt heavier and more like bloated and stuffed eating the vegan food than I have done for the past year eating animal foods. And um, I'm aware that, we possibly will run out of time soon, but I didn't get around to, in an earlier question, talking about the adverse health effects of being vegan, because I went vegan when I was 22, and 3 years in, at age 25, I got diagnosed with something called Barrett's esophagus, which is a condition where the epithelial cells in your esophagus change because they are being chronically exposed to acid. So they change to try and protect themselves because your esophagus is not built to handle the acid. And it's normally diagnosed in like men who are in their 50s and 60s who are heavy smokers, heavy drinkers, because fundamentally it's a problem with the sphincter muscle at the top of your stomach not closing properly after you've eaten. And the standard treatment for it is to put you on proton pump inhibitors to reduce the amount of stomach acid that you're able to produce
Hmm.
so that you can't damage your esophagus. And eventually, most people get surgery to repair the sphincter muscle. Um, but I've recently learned that chronically over consuming carbohydrates, especially to the point where you are stuffing yourself with them, lowers your stomach acid, and your body then doesn't shut the sphincter properly, which means that the acid splashes up your esophagus and damages it. And I didn't know at the time that being vegan and stuffing myself with all this food, because I never felt full, right? Like I was getting all my nutrients and all my protein according to the app, the chronometer app, but as we've already discussed, you know, things aren't as they seem due to bioavailability and anti-nutrients and things. Um, so I would always eat these huge meals and feel horrendous afterwards, really bloated, really stuffed, and horrible acid reflux. And I now know that doing that has caused me to just not have a sphincter that functions properly at the top of my stomach, and splash the acid up my esophagus, and which now damaged it permanently. And since being ex-vegan, when I eat meals that, say I'll eat like a piece of meat with some low carb veggies on the side, I don't get the acid reflux anymore, and I don't get the heaviness, and I don't get the bloating. So when I first left veganism, I went back to standard American diet. Well, first I was mostly vegetarian just while I was finding my feet. And then I was standard American diet for a bit because I was just like, this is all I know. And recently, the past few months, I've been low carb. So low carb, high fat. And despite having this problem with acid reflux for since I was 25 and I'm 33 now, it's gone. The acid reflux has gone. And it's not the meat, and it's not even fatty meat or cheese or eggs that are causing it. It was the high carbohydrates and the high fiber and the huge meals all along. So it's interesting that some people say that, eating that animal products gives them a heavy feeling, because it doesn't with me. It's the exact opposite. All those carbohydrates and all that junk food and all that processed food and sugar that I ate while I was vegan, that's what was doing it to me.
There might be some things with, I don't know, pancreas not producing enzymes, liver not producing bile well, I don't know at first, and stomach acid too. Again, if you come, for example, if you have lowered stomach acids, increased pH, so it becomes more basic from plants, maybe they struggle synthesizing
Yeah,
good potency stomach acid to break down meat properly. Maybe that's the cause. I don't know.
yeah, I have heard that myself as well, and I was a little bit worried that my own stomach acid would be really low, both from being vegan for so long, but also from taking proton pump inhibitors.
Mm.
So I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to digest the meat. But when I finally stopped eating so much carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates and sugar and starches, um, I no longer have to take the proton pump inhibitors. Like, it's the effect for me has been that dramatic. So my average daily diet now will look like, I usually eat 2 eggs for breakfast, and I'll either eat them with some bacon and then like mushrooms, or I'll have a small bowl of like chia seed porridge. Lunch will be usually leftovers from the night before, and then the night before has been usually like low carb veggies with some meat, or sometimes I still eat things like tofu, but now with some low carb veggies. And if I do have carbs like the rice and the pasta and the bread, I weigh it now, and I have a really small amount on my plate, just for like, it's almost like the carbs have
Mhm.
become a condiment. Um, so, and I feel 100 times better for it. And if I want dessert, I'll usually have some Greek yogurt, maybe with a little bit of peanut butter. Um, or I might have a handful of nuts or something like that, or a couple of squares of dark chocolate. And I swear to God, hands down, my problems with acid reflux have disappeared.
That's so interesting. It also might be something for people to look into. Like, so thank you for sharing your story like that, because I believe that many people will find it helpful for them. It's a pretty common issue. Very interesting observations.
I think
So,
just want to add one more thing with the previous question.
yeah.
When you say like there's people leaving veganism, especially long-term vegans, if they're scared of how their body might react. Um, One thing I did, so there was no adverse effects with me, and in fact, I feel better. But I was worried for my kids because my daughter had gone the first 3 years of life not eating any animal products, and my son had gone 9 months. I did something called the milk ladder and the egg ladder with them, where you, over a period of about 6 weeks, you start with super tiny amounts of milk and egg, and you gradually build it up week by week by week. And it's designed for children who have allergies to get the
Hmm.
bodies used to it. But because my kids had never had milk and egg, I was worried that if I just served them an egg one day or gave them a cup of milk, they might have an allergic reaction. So I decided to follow the milk and the egg ladder to make sure that they didn't have any allergies that I didn't know about. So if somebody wants to leave veganism, if they Google the egg ladder or the milk ladder, you can find lots of free resources to learn how to do this and how to slowly introduce or reintroduce those items to your body, to get your body used to it, so you don't then have an adverse reaction, or you're less likely to have one. So that's what I did with my children.
That's actually a great point because eggs actually, even though they are typical entry food, they're one of the most allergy inducing. Because even I read that even after being vegan, you can develop a
Mm.
new allergy, acquired allergy that you never had before because of microbiome changes. And I don't know, maybe there is some element, like after when people with eating disorders recover, they have this thing as refeeding syndrome where they have higher gut permeability, their gut wall is not as functional. So you tend to kind of, I guess, get a lot of like unbroken down proteins, maybe, I don't know, the bloodstream that causes them out, there's some immune response to them and stuff like that. So but yeah, eggs are tricky in that regard. Even again, they're the most intuitive first choice. And I mean, you mentioned the egg letter. I'm not familiar with this method, but what I'm familiar with is that egg yolks are less allergy um, inducing, possibly, than the egg white. So,
They are, yes, yes, that's correct. Um, but the egg ladder, you start week 1 where you get like a pie or something and
mm-hmm,
you beat an egg and you brush a tiny amount of egg on top of the pie and then you bake it in the oven because baking at high temperatures denatures most of the allergenic proteins.
mm-hmm,
And by week 6, you're eating products that have got raw egg in them, like mayonnaise, because sometimes people can have an allergic reaction to raw egg but not to cooked egg.
mm-hmm.
So like the most allergic product you could possibly eat would be something like mayonnaise because it's made with raw egg. But the least allergic project you could eat is if you eat something that's got egg baked into it. So, and then, and everything in between. So that's how the egg ladder works. And it's similar with the milk ladder, that the first week you do baked products that have got milk in them and you work all the way up to just a glass of milk on its own.
You know what's also interesting about the milk, actually? The Some people they may confuse lactose sensitivity with casein sensitivity because what I discovered after I came off vegan diet that there was like within the past like couple of decades or like maybe 3 5, I don't remember the timeline, but it's a relatively recent thing that cows were bred in a way that they produce A1 type casein, and there used to be A2 type casein. And also some
Yes,
smaller animals like sheep and goat, they also have in their dairy, they have A2 casein. It's much easier to handle for people. So a lot of people actually are sensitive to A1 casein. So it also might be a better choice to go with like maybe like goat, sheep milk at first, or opt for A2 cow milk. That's something else to possibly look into.
yes,
So that's great advice for people with children. Also, it's so tricky. Yeah, it's like you introduce them to the whole world from scratch. Must be
I
such a
did.
period
Yeah.
of amusement. I would be curious to learn more about how it all went, how your children actually responded to all of those foods, especially your daughter who was already in like conscious
Yeah.
age.
So, well,
What was it for her?
my daughter is still quite picky. She loves eggs and cheese, so that's good. She will also drink cow's milk, but she still prefers soya milk. And with meat, she only likes chicken or white fish. She hasn't liked any of the red meat that we've tried so far.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very occasionally, she'll eat bacon, but only if it's like really crispy. My son, on the other hand, it's almost like he's turned into a total caveman. Like if we have any meal with meat in it, like he's 2 in January and he's quite verbal already. If we have any meal with meat in it, he will shovel it into his mouth with his fists and then he'll start screaming, more meat, more meat. And he does like vegetables, but he will eat them last. And carbohydrates with him are very hit and miss. He tends to not like them very much. Like he'll just throw all his rice on the floor or something. He loves pasta though. But yeah, he's like a total cave baby. He adores meat.
That's cool. That's so interesting. Such a revolution for your
Yeah. So
family.
I think my daughter would probably go back to being vegetarian if she had the choice, but she
Hmm.
she does at least like chicken and fish, so she'll eat that.
Yeah, there's some iron in chicken. That's gonna be interesting, I guess. Progression because
Hmm.
yeah, for women, it's kind of vital to eat some
I
red meat or
know.
organs.
I know. I'm trying, but we're only a year in. So she
Yeah.
was, given that she's only 4 and she was vegan until she was 3, she's been vegan for a lot longer in
Hmm.
terms of like the percentage of her life than she has not been vegan. So we're working on it.
Have you tried giving her liver or anything like that?
Oh no,
No.
actually I have. I've tried giving them both pate and they both really like pate. So I forgot about that. My daughter does like pate. She will eat pate. So that is a way of getting iron into her.
That's cool. Pate is actually something I ate my entire childhood too. It's so tasty. Well, I loved
Mm.
it.
I want to learn how to make my own because in the
Mm-hmm.
UK, if you buy it from the supermarket, um, it's packed full of like preservatives and flavorings and starches and other crap. So and it's you look at the ingredients list and it'll be like 40% liver, and I'm like, no, I want this to be better than this. So I'm gonna learn how to, like, I've recently got into making sourdough bread. So if I can make sourdough bread, I'm sure I can learn how to make pate from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are plenty of recipes. I think you'll find something cool. It shouldn't be that hard. My family I know makes. I never tried it because they live so far away from me. So, but I would be excited to try homemade. They say it tastes just like from the store, so I think it works. Whatever recipes they could
Hmm.
find online work.
Oh, well, that's very encouraging to hear. So
Yeah.
I'll get on that. I'll try making my own.
Now on some kind of sad question. So in the survey, you responded that you felt guilty and kind of fearful to quit veganism to begin with, but then when you quit, you also experienced a lot of hatred from people, and that was a quite devastating experience for you. What was it all about? Like, why why did that happen in your life, and how did you actually recover from that, and how did you come to peace and rebuild after that experience?
So the question says people, but for me it was just one person. That is my partner. Um, my partner and I went vegan together back in 2014, and they were very, very, very unhappy that I didn't want to be vegan anymore and that I didn't want the kids to be vegan anymore. So it almost ended our marriage.
I see.
Um, so that's what I mean when I say that the experience was devastating. We fought a lot. We, you know, separated for a few days where I went to stay somewhere else for a bit. Um, things got so bad that I genuinely thought that we were going to get divorced. Um, my wife is basically was absolutely devastated because we'd kind of made this commitment together. We had had many conversations about it where we said we weren't going to go back, that we were committed to being vegan for life, that it was our way of contributing to the environment and to saving the animals. Um, so when I then said, I think we made the wrong decision. I think I've made a mistake. They kind of didn't want to accept that, and it got brought up a lot in conversations about like, why did you agree to raise the kids vegan with me if you didn't intend to follow through with it? And I guess my answer to that was I fully did intend to follow through with it until I actually saw it in practice. And you can't really prepare yourself for having kids until you've had them. You say everybody. There's a funny saying which is, the best parents are those who haven't had children yet,
Hmm.
because those are the people who say, well, my child is never going to do this and my child is going to be brought up like that and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And the actual reality of having children is extremely different. And it was no different in this case. We had this idealized image in our mind of we were going to have this lovely little vegan family and we were going to be super ethical and we were going to be so environmentally friendly. And then we actually had children and I saw what was happening, first with my daughter and then with myself when I was trying to carry and sustain a pregnancy. And then when I was, after the pregnancy and I'd been breastfeeding my son and finding that I was feeling way more exhausted than I thought I should. I know that all new parents feel exhausted, but this was like extreme, like on another level,
Mm-hmm.
feeling so depleted. And the other thing that happened as well is that I started getting cavities in my teeth while I was breastfeeding, despite good dental hygiene. And I now know that it's because my body was pulling calcium from my teeth to put in the breast milk. So when I kind of had my big epiphany and was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I this is wrong. Um, as soon as I physically could, I went and told my partner, and all hell broke loose. We were so upset with each other, and we were so fighting for so long. And it's been a year now, and my partner is still vegan, but things have gotten a lot better. There's more of a mutual understanding now. There's a lot more respect, and we got there kind of with the help of um counseling, couples counseling. Um, so we have come a long way since then, but at the time it was honestly devastating. Like I genuinely thought that we were going to end up splitting up over it, and we've been together for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, really hard to kind of consider what this might mean.
That's yeah, it's a huge crisis. I can imagine. And thank you for sharing your story. And I mean, it's a pretty vulnerable thing, and I really respect your willingness to talk about it. I guess I mean I have not much to comment on that because it's like a very influential, very grand episode of your private life, and I just wish and I hope that you will find some ultimate peace, perhaps, and new takes, new shared perspective on that will bind you even closer and better, and will further reinforce and nurture your relationships going on.
Yeah, I think it was taken so hard because it was something that we did together,
Mm-hmm.
and we did it all together, even the kind of the quiet activism stuff.
Yes.
And it was very much like an us against the world thing because both of our families were a bit like, why are you doing that? And would like make fun of us. Um, so like it was through it all, we always kind of had each other. Um, and we ended up making new friends because of it. And we no longer speak to those friends, not because I'm an ex-vegan, but because we've just kind of drifted apart. Like some of them have moved to a different part of the country, and we just don't really see them or speak to them anymore. So none of them know yet, but I'm not close enough to them to kind of go about messaging them all to let them know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I haven't had to kind of come out on social media or to like a group of friends or what have you and say that I'm no longer vegan. So I haven't had I don't know what it would be like with those friends that we did make. I imagine that they probably would just stop talking to me. But interestingly, one of the first vegans I ever met, which was one of my roommates at university, she's not vegan anymore either. she she became an ex-vegan long before I did.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first realized that I didn't want to do this anymore, I reached out to her and I said, "Look, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but hi, how are you? How are you doing? Um, this is what I'm feeling. Can I have some advice?" And she offered me an amazing amount of support, and we talked through all the feelings I was having, and um, she really, really helped me out. So it was handy that I had her, who I'd known as a vegan all along, and then accidentally found out that she wasn't one anymore. Because then I was able to message her and be like, "Look, you've walked this path before me. Can you give me some help?"
So the next question that I have is whether you feel like veganism is becoming a global phenomenon, whether it's influencing the culture, the market, whether it, in your opinion, kind of becomes a new norm. Do you feel like that something like that is happening?
I used to. So back, it probably started in about 2015. It suddenly exploded in the UK. So a lot more products became available in the shops.
More and more celebrities seem to be coming out saying that they were going vegan. Um, and even some people personal to us, like either messaged us to tell us that they were going vegan too, or they told us that they were dropping a lot of meat or that they were going vegetarian or something. Recently, um, I feel like going, it's reversing a little bit. Like there seems to have been like a huge explosion in ex-vegans. I already told you about my friend who I knew about who was no longer vegan. There was another kind of vague friend who that I didn't speak to anymore, but could still see his stuff on social media. He used to run a vegan shop um, back where we used to live, and he's not vegan anymore. There's loads of celebrities who were once vegan who now say they're not vegan anymore. And I've also seen in the UK shops in supermarkets the amount of vegan products that are available is hugely reducing. So several of the companies have gone um, have gone bust. I don't know how you'd say that in Russia. They've gone out of business.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of products that we used to be able to get, we now can't get anymore because the company's gone out of business.
That's
Um,
interesting.
we used to have a. I go to the same supermarket most of the time, and in one of the aisles, there used to be this huge vegan section, and it's now a quarter of the size that it used to be. Um, so it is like there is a it seems to be reducing. If you look at the trends and statistics according to Google as well, the number of people identifying as vegan in the UK is decreasing as well, slowly. There's also like what seems to be the kind of latest eating trend is like flexitarian. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people who were once vegan seem to have gone flexitarian. So they've reintroduced animal products, but they're just eating less of them now than they were before. Um, and yeah, so on a personal level, in terms of like number of individuals, the number of people that I know personally who are vegan, it's reduced. But what has kind of happened is that the narrative in society within like the healthcare system and the environmental movement and the other parts of the establishment, that has seen an increase, in my opinion, in kind of support for veganism. So it's pretty possible nowadays to find any kind of environmental movement where they don't loudly support veganism as the way forward. Um, Everywhere you look, from like a health or diet and nutrition point of view, or almost everywhere, um, it lends its support loudly to veganism and says that it's much healthier for you if you reduce your meat intake. Like everywhere you look in the UK at the moment, it's telling you constantly to reduce the amount of saturated fat you eat, reduce the amount of animal products that you eat, reduce the amount of red meat in particular that you eat. So it's very strange. Like back when there were loads of vegans, it seemed like the like society and the National Health Service wasn't really speaking much about it. And now that there aren't so many vegans anymore, um, the powers that be are kind of loudly shouting about it and saying, well, this is what we need to do to reverse climate change, and this is what we need to do to all be healthy, and this is what we need to do to, you know, save money and things. Like there's a big push in the UK at the moment because we're currently going through something in our country called the cost of living crisis, where everything's way too expensive and people's wages aren't increasing. So one of the ways which everybody's saying is a good way to save money is to just drop the animal products from their diet. So yeah, it's kind of both. Like there's not as many individual vegans around, and a lot of companies that make vegan products have gone out of business. But now there's a lot of kind of higher powers saying that we all should start doing this.
Interesting. It's so actually a lot of people that participate in these interviews, they're not from the US. And so I'm every time I'm really surprised to hear the what happens in different countries. So your observations are also interesting. What shocks me is that those companies are going out of business because in the US it doesn't seem to be the case. So it's
Hmm.
pretty interesting. But at the same time, I see a lot of growth in the field of like animal-based nutrition. So there are some companies that market their products as regeneratively farmed. Some
Yeah,
like I buy personally ground meat with organ meat mixed into it. So products like that
I
emerge.
can't find that in the UK. I wish I could.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
although
don't.
I do live quite close to a farm
Mm-hmm.
that raise and slaughter all of their own cattle. Um, and they have a page on the internet where you can contact them. So I might, because they I don't know if they're a regenerative farm, but they pride themselves on being local. So they grow all the feed for the cattle. They raise the cattle from calves. They get
Mm-hmm.
them slaughtered locally. And then the cows, once they've been slaughtered, go back to the farm, and the farmer's wife is the one that butchers them. So I wonder if I could speak to them personally and say, look, could you throw some organs in with the ground meat when you make some for me? But yeah, you can't find it at the supermarket if you want like organ meats mixed in with the ground meat.
And so yeah, that's what we have different to here, I guess. And again, yeah, the vegan market is still it's still present, and there are new brands emerging. Actually, every season there is some new box in the freezer in the freezer
Mm.
section, at least. Like a lot
Yeah,
of.
we've seen a real decrease in new products, and that I can't remember the last time I saw a new vegan product come out. The other thing that's really big in the UK at the moment is keto. So there's a lot of
Hmm,
new keto products coming out every week,
same
and
here
sometimes
too.
they also happen to be vegan as well because they're made of like nuts and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar here too. Which is all of like different specialty diets. Yeah. Another question that I have for you is, for which stage of life do you think veganism is the safest? And for which stage of life is veganism the most dangerous?
So, of all the examples you put in your question, I would say probably an adult in their 30s and 40s, as long as it is not a woman who is trying to conceive or is pregnant or is breastfeeding. So just a general adult, kind of in the prime of their life. That's what I would say is the safest. You know, they don't have any unless they're a bodybuilder or something, they shouldn't have kind of unique, outstanding nutritional needs outside that of other adults. um, that's when I'd say it was probably the safest and most dangerous. Again, from using your list of examples, it's probably got to be a 3-year-old child or pregnancy because of the amount of growth and development that is happening in those stages. The children grow super quick, as I've seen myself. And when you're pregnant, you've only got 9 months to take a cell and grow it into a human being. So you need all of the nutrition you can get.
Yeah, it makes sense. I agree with that, I think. So then, um, how did you resolve the ethical and environmental debate for you when you quit veganism? Did you not think about those things anymore? Or did you find some other information that supports your current lifestyle, making it sustainable and ethical in your understanding?
So I went through a bit of a transition period where by the time I was done, I was like so done that I stopped caring for a little while. I was just kind of like, I feel so bad um, physically and mentally, and I'm so worried for my kids that I don't have the mental capacity, I don't have the brain space anymore to care about the environment and ethics and things like that. Like, I just want to forget about it all. So I kind of pushed it out of my brain for a bit. A year on, I kind of feel differently. And I realised that I do still care about the environment and I do still care about ethics. And the way I resolve it for myself is by taking sort of a really deep look, again, through lots of research, because I love reading and I love learning new things. And over the past year, I've done a lot of reading and research, and I've found that some of the figures that have been kind of fed to us from the environmental movement have been either overinflated or just downright wrong. So most of the film Cowspiracy is like bollocks. bullshit, So I've learned more about that, and I've learned that, the biggest culprit when it comes to the environment is the energy sector and the transport sector, so fossil fuels. So, in the most accurate and up-to-date statistic I can find, for example, for the UK's emissions, is that animal agriculture contributes to 7% of our emissions, right? So the other 93%, the majority of that is based around fossil fuels. And it seems silly that we're kind of going after the 7% when we could be going after the 93%.
Mm-hmm.
So I started kind of thinking about other changes that I can make in my life regarding how can I, cut my carbon footprint in other areas. But ultimately, that kind of led me down another rabbit hole, whereas it's like, well, is me cutting my own carbon footprint enough to make a difference if we've got sort of like celebrities flying around in private jets, sometimes of which are completely empty, and we've got, the emissions, for example, from one single private jet flight is more than I will make in a year. So maybe this isn't going to be a kind of bottom-up solution. This has got to be a top-down kind of way of tackling things. So we need stricter regulation from governments. We need governments to kind of go after the biggest companies in the world that are producing the vast majority of climate change. Like and what they seem to be doing is going, you there, you lowly person who lives in a small house in the middle of England, you need to stop using plastic straws, and you need to cut the amount of meat that you eat, and you need to stop taking flights. But don't pay no attention to the big companies over there that are producing all the emissions, and pay no attention to the private flights. You need to change your life. So that's kind of given me a different angle to look at. And when it comes to ethics, and also a little bit environment as well, I've started learning more about regenerative agriculture. So, where can I source animal products from where the animals are looked after a lot better, and they're not just in big feedlots or cages, and they get to live like a much better life. And I'm very fortunate in where I live, and that there's several places near me. Like I can easily get access to backyard eggs, and one day I do want to keep my own chickens when I can afford it. I can easily get access to locally raised and slaughtered meat, and there's even a dairy farm near me that has raw milk that I can get hold of, and you can go and see the cows, and they have acres and acres of land that they free range them on. So I'm starting to kind of learn more about the environment that I live in, and where can I access animal products that are a lot more ethical without just abstaining from them completely. So I guess that's how I've kind of resolved the ethical and the environmental debate within myself. But above all of that, I guess is my own kind of health and well-being. Have you heard the saying, charity begins at home?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
means, yeah, it basically means you cannot look after anybody else until you've looked after your own. And the first, most important thing that you look after is yourself. Once you have made your life such that you feel happy and healthy and full of vitality, you then have a full cup that you can pour from, and you can start to look after other people. And, the next most important people that you look after is your own family, and then your friends, and then you look after your local community. And only then would you then see beyond that and be like, now I can start to look after things on a global scale. So even if I couldn't get access to like locally farmed regenerative meat, and I couldn't get access to backyard eggs, knowing now that I kind of need those things in order to thrive and live a healthy lifestyle, well, sorry, vegans, I guess if this sounds really, really selfish, but that is the most important thing to me. And, I have unfortunately come across a couple of people, again, online, not people that I know personally, who have said that wanting to be healthy and wanting to thrive is a really selfish reason for eating animals. And I was like, well, okay, then I guess I'll have to be selfish, but I value my own health and that of my children much, much more than I value the life of some random cow somewhere that I've never met.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way the world is. And you can't tell me that if you had your family in a burning building and there was also a dog in there, you're not going to go save the dog first, are you? You're like, we all, however much many vegans don't want to admit it, we all have kind of a hierarchy. And I know that within my own hierarchy, I need to look after myself first. And that then makes me a good mother and able to look after my children. And by extension, makes me a good friend. And I'm able to help care for my friends and my wider community in that order. So, yes, I do take the ethical and the environmental arguments into consideration, but only after I've stopped and looked after myself and figured out what I need to be healthy. And I tend to find that when I talk to people online who think that health is a selfish reason to eat animal products, they tend to be the same people that don't seem to like themselves very much. Like they don't seem to value themselves enough to take care of their health because, particularly on Reddit, where you can see where people have been active in other communities, there's a heck of a lot of them who are also on forums dedicated to depression and anxiety and nihilism and um, there's a movement called like activism, which is basically just for the death of everything. Like we
Mm-hmm.
should just kill everything on the whole planet because where there's life, there's suffering. So yeah, there's an antinatalism. A lot of them are antinatalists as well. So yeah, the people who don't like themselves or indeed other humans very much are the ones that tend to say it's not okay for you to put your health first.
Yeah, no, like it's my mom kind of taught me to not make sacrifices because she says nobody will ever appreciate them. But the other side of it is that when you sacrifice something, you you make something that you sacrificed for, someone that you sacrificed for, pay a too high price because your well-being donated to something or to someone is an insane burden, and it's very difficult to not try to extract some benefit from that when you make a sacrifice because it must be for something, it must be worthy. So you kind of, even maybe unconsciously, would be expecting some payback for that sacrifice that nobody asked from you. And it's a super huge burden on whoever and whatever you sacrifice for. So I think that it's a very important thing to actually give yourself as much as you need to be happy and thriving. Indeed, before you start thinking about anything or anyone in the world, just because it's unethical to donate your well being, that's a super expensive thing that you are responsible for, to any cause. It's like, it's just,
Mm,
in my opinion, actually sacrificing that is, again, is just one of the most unethical things that one can do. But it's my part of my philosophy. Because I personally, I
yeah,
wouldn't want anyone to sacrifice for me because I know that I will be entitled to paying it back in some form, and I don't want that. So I project it to, like, vice versa, that I don't want to sacrifice anything for anything because I don't want to have any expectations for anything. And so I want like, ideally, my idealistic picture of the world, of course, some sacrifices are vital, are inevitable, right? But when it's up to my free will, I don't want to make those sacrifices. I want everything to be on a goodwill when I understand why something is good to do. And when the cost of of doing something good becomes uncomfortable for me, that's where I need to evaluate whether I'm violating my own boundaries or not. Because if I'm violating my boundaries, I'm kind of throwing off some global balance because everything in the world has its own space, its own domain. And if you start sacrificing the space that's required for you to live well, you start throwing off the balance because other things start exploding out of proportion. That's how I see it. Veganism for you, never again, or depends?
Never again unless a survival situation. So when I said earlier about in one of my longer answers, humans are uniquely adapted to survive on lots of different foods. So I'm confident in that, if I ever did find myself in a survival situation where I couldn't get hold of animal foods, or, there was some sort of collapse of society and animal foods became unavailable or unaffordable, I know that I will survive for a long time being vegan. But it's not thriving. So yeah, never again unless it's a really weird like survival type situation.
Thank you. And the last question that I prepared is, in your opinion, what could each human do to positively contribute to the world?
Um, Remain open-minded, read, learn, research, do what you can, don't judge, be kind, and be understanding.
Super
So
cool.
don't give your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength to any one thing. Don't give your everything to one thing and then completely close your mind off to any other viewpoint and any other information source or any other culture, because you will end up far richer if you keep your mind open and you are willing to accept information and um, learning from as many different resources as possible.
That's super important. Hard to implement sometimes, but super important. I think a lot of
Yeah,
people learn that from being vegan in particular.
yeah,
That,
it is hard. It is hard, especially when you're a young adult like I was, and you feel like you've got it all figured out. You've found your answer to all of life's problems, and you're
Mhm.
going to stay this way forever. It is really, really hard to let that go. But you end up, I feel like I know a lot more now. I'm a lot more experienced. I'm 11 years down the line now from when I first went vegan. And I've learned a valuable lesson that you mustn't close your mind off to any one kind of big source of information and learning. You can't, because you just you end up not being able to see important information. Like, I guess an English saying would be, you end up not being able to see the wood for the trees
Mhm.
if you just refuse to listen to other viewpoints. And it's so hard, especially when sometimes other people's viewpoints are really unpleasant. Like, and I'm certainly not saying that you should go, listen to all the racists out there when they sound off about other races. Only you know what you can and cannot do. Only you know what you should and shouldn't listen to. But my biggest advice for anyone is stay open minded, read, learn, research,
Yeah, that's really
and be
great.
and be
Great
understanding.
point. Yeah, trying to
Be
understand everything that
Yeah,
happens that you
yeah,
encounter, that somehow
exactly.
comes to your life, is one of
Yeah,
the super important things, because it's often very tempting to judge before understanding, and then
exactly.
sometimes things are not as simple as they appear at first.
Right, right. And one day it could be you. I was that vegan. I was that person who thought that people were just making excuses and that everyone should be vegan and there's no reason you couldn't be. And now I'm having to eat, humble pie. And
Mhm.
I've had to really reflect on myself and learn a lot about myself. So yeah, don't learn from my mistakes rather than from your own. But yeah, don't try not to judge. Be as non-judgmental and be as understanding and be as kind as you can.
Yeah, that's a very important lesson, very important advice to actually accept. Thank you so much for today's conversation.
You're
I
very
hope.
welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time as well, and thank you for participating in the survey.
You're welcome. I'm really looking forward to the results. I'm super intrigued and I'm super interested in what you find out.